Bob Brown.
I got to
Welcome
turn
to
my volume down.
Do what? Oh,
I
you
got
have
to turn my
slurpee.
volume down. Whoa, that was yeah.
Okay, I'm turning myself down a little bit. Good
Yeah, there you go.
morning. This is Bob Brown. Welcome to B Cube Sunday morning. It is just me and Jim today. David Gerrold, bless his heart, and I mean that in the best way, not in the southern way, uh, is off traveling today. So he has said that I get to listen to Jim all by myself.
There
So
you go. Well, he carried it. He carried it last month when I was traveling. My wife and I were on the road southwest last month. So, Dave, excuse me. I've got a cough drop in my mouth. I'm still recovering from COVID, and I got kind of a cough. So I'm trying not to trying not to cough in your face.
well, hey, it's a good any day that I get you sitting on the screen, giving me your thoughts on the world is a good day. I don't suppose you managed to catch the debate.
I did watch it, yeah, and I did already enough, but I did watch it because that's what you people expect from me, and it's kind of what I do for a living. And so I did watch it, and it was like, first of all, okay, first of all, let I don't know what the word we need is, but it's not debate. That's not a debate. All right, it's masturbation. It maybe, well, and even that's not the right word, but it's a bunch. These people talk past each other. They're not debating in any fashion, and this is the people who follow me for a long time know how I feel about these goddamn political debates. This is absolutely the worst possible way to pick a leader. Tell me when this technique will ever come in handy. I mean, we're on the verge of war with nuclear war with the Russians, and so what? Putin and whoever the American president are going to get up there, stand on the stage and debate, and then we'll pick the winner. I mean, for God's sake, man, it's just theater. And the worst part about it is that Americans are we're so addicted to reality TV bullshit that we don't even give a crap. We want to be entertained. And every day, I mean, and literally, our press is like this. Our press is driven by social media nowadays. And so the next morning after the debate, your headlines are nothing about Ron DeSantis, Vivian, for God's sake, man. These are grown adults writing headlines with the word clap back in it. I mean, come on. This is how democracy dies, okay? The worst, the people have seen me, I've written this many times that the greatest strength of a republic is its citizens, but it's also its greatest weakness. And we just constantly play to the lowest common denominator in this country because that's what the profit is. And so these debates, nobody gives a shit what any. Tell me out of the how many. First of all, how many people were in this debate? The Republican leading the leading contender for the Republican nomination wasn't there. He was prepared to be indicted. These are all the second stringers, the junior varsity. These people you might as well be watching Michelle Bachmann debate Marco Rubio, for Christ's sake. None of these people are gonna, and the thing about it is you couldn't walk away from that debate the next morning and get up in the morning and go, that Vivian guy, boy, he really had some policy statements. You don't even know what the hell he said. You can't remember a single word that asshole said. When they reported this the next day, it was all about who got in a dig at who clapped back at who. None of it was about leadership or policy or anything that actually matters to the average American, including the dipshits that are going to vote for these people.
Well,
It's absolutely the worst possible way. You're picking. Excuse me. This is how you got Trump. You picked the guy that was best at entertainment to be president, not the guy that was best at leadership or the guy that was the guy that had the best policy statements or the most original ideas or the guy that you could depend on in a crisis. No, you pick the reality TV star, and that's what we're doing with this. Just nothing ever comes out of presidential debate or political debates in any fashion other than it's like watching a goddamn tractor pull. Might as well bet on it. It'd be more entertaining.
I guess I would make one point or two very short ones. One, I am not a fan of Nikki Haley in any stretch.
Yeah. I know where you're going, man. I know where you're going.
When she opened her mouth and said, "What the hell are you guys talking about?" Basically, you're the people that got us in this mess. Okay.
Right. When Nikki Haley is the voice of reason in the room, you are off the rails and down the embankment, man. Wow. Again, if I had to pick from this lineup, I'd have to pick Nikki Haley, but she's horrible. She's a horrible human being. Her ideas are terrible. But out of this crowd, I mean, again, when they took Trump off the playing field for this debate, and where does that leave you? I mean, the next guy, Trump, is my idiot governor, DeSantis, who is, I don't know, somewhere in Iowa eating dogs or some shit, while we have the first hurricane season bearing down on us and mass shootings in the streets and neo-Nazis marching outside the Capitol. Where's Ron? He picked a fight with a mouse and went to Iowa to, deep throat corn dog. The thing about it is that this guy, DeSantis is the next. Then if they finally do lock Trump up, and the best part about that is that I literally am watching 70 million people on my Twitter feed say to me, well, even if he does go to prison, there's nothing in the Constitution that prevents him from becoming president. I mean, that's literally the state of this nation, okay? But even if Trump, if the next guy up is Ron DeSantis, who I apparently were like this again. I'm back 6-7 years in time, and I'm watching Michelle Bachmann, Crazy Eyes Bachmann debate, right? And you listen to these people. Here's DeSantis saying on national television to the world, he'll order the army to invade Mexico. He's going to send special forces in to kill Mexicans. And in this paragraph that he says this, he says that he's just going to shoot people coming across. He's just going to order the border patrol to shoot people coming across the border and leave their son. I get it, and literally the people in the room were applauding this.
Hey, again, I'll give some credit to Pence.
Yeah. Oh God, please. And again, that's the state of the nation that we have to give credit to Mike Pence, for God's sake, man.
Hey, tan, rested, and ready to roar. And
oh my God.
Anyway, at least he said, no, you don't do it that way. Oh. You get a hold of the Mexican government, and you work.
Well, again, look, the problem with this is again, this is again, we've circled around to the fundamental problem with debates. It's about scoring points on each other. It's not about actual rational, legitimate policy ideas or leadership or the direction the country should go. There's, again, debates, especially debates like this, these pre-primary debates where it's just a bunch of people in a room that hats are going to drop out in the next 2 months. are busy trying to say the single most outrageous thing that they can think of, so that they're in social media and a paper the next morning, and they make the headlines. But there's nothing rational about any of this stuff. And this is again also the this is also of extremism, what has become of what's left of the Republican Party. Um, Look, 30 years ago, you could say, well, I disagree with Reagan, but well, I was going to say, I don't think he's crazy. Well, he was crazy, but you could there were at least rational people in both political parties that could meet. Don't get me wrong, but the majority of the country was, I don't even know if the majority is the right word, but there were people in in Congress who were at least rational enough that business could get done, that you didn't feel like we were on the verge of civil war all the time. And I'd lay a lot of this on Reagan, because Reagan, Reagan brought a lot of extremists into the party based on, the same bullshit that started with Nixon. Lee Atwater's Southern strategy brought these extremists into the day. Prior to Reagan, you could look at some of these evangelical nut bars and say, okay, even Republicans was like, buddy, you got to go sit down. Nowadays, these people have eaten the party alive. And the problem with extremism is that you can never go back. Once you embrace extremism, you keep becoming more and more extreme. It's like the National Enquirer. You can't publish a story about a battleship on the moon, kidnapped by aliens from World War II and appearing on the moon. There's no way to follow that story up with anything rational. You can't walk that back. You have to become more and more extreme, right? And I mean, that's the Alex Jones model. You can't just say, I disagree with you. You start down the road of conspiracy theory and extremism, then every story, every position has to be more extreme than the last one. There's no way to walk that back in any rational fashion whatsoever. And that's the problem with the Republican parties. They kept, Reagan had some, I won't call Reagan an extremist, but he was on the far end of the conservative curve. There's no doubt about that. And he extremist into the mainstream of his party. And those people, and it's not, again, you have a series of unfortunate events, conjunctions into the 9/11, all of those kind of COVID pandemics, those kind of things, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and those things all led to, in a more rational world, we might have handled them better, and we might have come out of them still relatively intact. But because we allowed the extremists to be in charge of certain things, those events were handled poorly, and they drove us more and more and more to the extreme. And even the traditional words left and right don't apply anymore, because the country is so far to the right. Some of these extremists are so far to the right that anything to the left of them looks like Attila the Hun, for Christ's sake. You now literally have a lineup. You have a debate of people that are all extremists. And the one that actually looks rational is Nikki Haley, and she's an extremist herself. She's just less extreme than the other ones. I mean, you have whatever the hell Ramaswamy there, Vivek Ramaswamy. He's, if I'm even pronouncing his name right, but he and if I'm not, it's not on purpose. It's just I'm not good with this stuff. But this is a guy that literally went on television and said that he didn't think young people should vote, that you should have to be 25 to 35 years old to vote, that you should have to serve in the military to vote. These are constitutional changes to the fundamental makeup of our country. This is every position that this guy says is more For God's sake, this is a guy that just alienated an entire generation. There's no way in hell he's going to say something even dumber than that, and the next day something even dumber. But these people are 60 points behind the leading contender for the Republican nomination, who's the most extremist of the bunch. This is a guy, Trump was, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but Trump was on his social yesterday bragging about winning a golf tournament at his own golf course. And I you know, and his statement was just so far over the top that it's hard to even realize, it's hard to even believe that an adult human being typed it, let alone a guy that used to be president of America. And yet there are people cheering this guy. They're wearing shirts with his face on it, with his mugshot on it, as if. And again, I look at again. It's extremism. It becomes cult-like behavior. You have Trump supporters right now. Two of his ones are Dinesh D'Souza, which I can't imagine why Dinesh D'Souza would support Trump, because Dinesh the felon would be in prison right now. Trump hadn't pardoned his ass, so I guess he kind of owes him. And another extremist nut bar, Laura Loomer. These people are on social media yesterday, and they're making statements that are so bizarre that you really can't look at them and wonder. You have to wonder if these people have their tongue in their cheek while typing this stuff, but they're real. They mean it, and what they were typing, and they continue to do it yesterday. I'm watching his stream up the corner of my screen here. Trump has a mugshot now, so that gives him street cred with black people who, I mean, the level of implied racism in these statements. You just, my God. And what, I'll tell you, it's coming from Dinesh D'Souza, for Christ's sake. I mean, this is a guy that ought to be at least sensitive to this stuff. But they're talking about how Trump, and he's unfairly arrested, and he's got a mug shot. He's got street cred. He's a thug now, and like as if every person of color is. Again, and these people are just unashamed about the statements that they're making, and they have millions of followers who are now. This morning, I see this now. This started yesterday on Twitter, and then to see it on. I don't know if mainstream media is the right word, but media, broadcast media, where you have talking heads looking onto the camera, dead serious, saying the same thing. And I mean, I don't even know. There isn't a rational person in the world, black, white, brown, yellow, green, whatever. I don't care what color you are. There isn't a rational person in the world that shouldn't look at that stuff and think, my God, you're crazy. And yet 70 million Americans are looking at that and saying, I'm voting for that guy. They watch this stuff. They make billions of dollars a year watching this. This is not rational. This is insanity. And again, we grew up our whole lives. I was born in the early 60s. Whole life. I'm 20 years out from World War II is when I was born. And I grew up my whole life, my formative years, looking back at my dad watched World War II specials every time they were on TV. And when I got old enough, I did too. And you look at that stuff and you think, my God, how did an entire country like Germany lose its goddamn mind? And you watch interviews with normal Germans lived in that world, who voted for the Nazis, who didn't consider themselves to be Nazis, but stood by on the streets and clapped. And you think, how could a whole country go that insane and murder 12 million people, shoveling bodies into ovens? I mean, where do you get that crazy? Well, you're looking at it. We're looking at it right now. or right
Jim,
now in our own country. That's how.
that is the saddest, most frightening awareness of this whole thing. Is because
Yeah.
I used to ask myself that same question and say, how could it happen? And now I know.
Yeah, we're literally looking at it, and I'm not saying that it has to happen. In fact, if you read what I write, if you're people that follow me out there, and you read what I write, you know, I'm optimistic about this, and I do truly believe that we can change course, but it does require that we stand up to it, that we fight back with every breath against this stuff, and it's never going to be over because fascism and fascism's not the right word because these people are not fascist. They espouse fascist ideas, but just like fascism in the 1920s, we're going to have to come up with a word to describe this. Right now, I tend to call it Trumpism, though I don't know that that's entirely correct either. Like like fascism, Hitler was Hitler took advantage. He didn't invent it. He came along 10 years later to this movement had already started and took advantage of it. And that's kind of how I see Trump. You still there, buddy? Disappeared.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I leaned
Are,
over
are,
to get a picture because I
I'm not
wanted
seeing any. I'm not seeing any comments scroll up the screen like we usually do. So I'm always wondering if we're online here. But again, to continue what I was saying, you know, Trump took advantage of a condition that has been developing in America for the last 30 years. And, um, you know, back in Reagan's day, people thought it was cute. Reagan done backward racist thing, and people would laugh and they'd be like, even the people that were the targets of his statement would look at the TV and say, well, that's just Reagan, you know, that's how he is. And we let it go by. And Ronald Reagan, I mean, that guy, you know, he was a personable dude. I shook his hand once. It was like a cold, dead chicken foot. But he was a simple guy. And there's a whole, I don't know how, especially like when I had COVID, I was so goddamn sick. I sat in this chair and I clicked through YouTube channels, and there's this whole substream of YouTube shorts of Reagan telling jokes, and there are these folksy, ignorant, goddamn stupid country stories where he's trying to make some point about America or politics or some damn thing. And my God, if you watch one of those, the YouTube algorithm decides that you must love Reagan, and they just show you that over and over again. And I've clicked through some of those because I was in the military then. Reagan was my commander. I wound up on a parade one time listening to this guy talk, and it was this endless series of disconnected stories about democracy and freedom and, you know, and the evil empire and all that kind of crap. And he could tell a story. I didn't give him that. He was a hell of an actor. I mean, he would, the shitty actor is why he became a politician, but at least he could act. He could tell his story, tell these folksy stories. And even if it was the dumbest thing you've ever heard, people all clap because of the way he did it. And so we let him get away with stuff. But Reagan himself committed treason. Oliver North and the people in the shadows of that administration sold weapons to Iran, who Reagan literally ran against the idea, you know, the hostage crisis in Iran, and Iran was this horrible regime, that they were our enemies. And as soon as he got this, they started selling these people weapons. And this is the same time that he's talking about how much he loved Israel and how he supported those people. He was literally selling Iran weapons and then using that money to finance a war in CIA was in on it. I mean, this is not speculation or hyperbole. This is the historical record.
Yeah.
And you have Americans now that look back and they say, well, you know, Reagan, he's a great president. He wasn't a great president. He was a horrible human being. And the worst part about Reagan is that, yeah, he's gone. But all the scumbags, the traitors, the sons of bitches that were in the background, that were pulling those strings, they're still around. They're the people who walked us right straight into a war in Iraq. They are Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz and Dick Cheney, and they're still around, and they're goddamn in the background, pulling the strings, doing the same shit that they have been doing for 30 years. And here we are. And that kind of thing only goes one way. You don't get a better world out of that kind of duplicity, that kind of treason justified to make the world that we want. That kind of immorality only leads one way. And we're looking at it. And for 30 years, we've been going more and more and more downhill. And the end result of that, fucking Trump. This ignorant, bombastic, backward ass, the guy that can't even play a round of golf on his own goddamn golf course without cheating.
Now, Jim, I want you not to have a stroke this morning.
I'm not going to have a stroke.
Okay, well, that's good.
I'm not even wound up. This is how I am normally. Are you kidding? You've been in the same room with me.
No, you said something very profound. Well, lots of things.
That'd be an accident.
You talk about it, it always comes back. It always comes back around.
It always comes back.
You beat this stuff, and you think you've won, and then 20 years later, or 30 years later, or 49 years later,
10 years later, it comes back, and that's a true statement. And this is the problem. Let me be generous and say our side. I run into this all the time. I write about it. I have people write to me. This is probably the most hate mail that I get is from people on the left, and I can't even say liberals because that word doesn't mean the same thing it used to mean. So I have to say the left, but again, nowadays the left is 90% of the planet, and the right is this extreme 10% over here. And so whenever I use those words, and we're going to have to come up with different words, we're going to have to come up with different diagrams to describe positions, but generally speaking, the worst hate I get is from the left, and I get it from people who say, you told us to vote for Obama, and we voted for Obama, and we didn't get a pony, and now we're mad. And you told us Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and we got Donald Trump, and we're mad.
Well, guess what?
I don't know how to tell you this, but maintenance of civilization is not a one and done job. Being a citizen is a fight every single day of your life for however long you live, and then you die and somebody else has to do it. It's never get to go vote for some candidate, and then when they're elected, you just get to go back to watching TV and smoking dope all day, and everything's fixed. It doesn't work that way. It has never worked that way, not in the entire recorded history of humanity. It's every day. It's never over. And the minute that you think it's over, these sons of bitches come right back. You want.
One of the greatest lies they're going to tell us is that we won.
Yeah, you can't win. There's no, again, it's not about winning and losing. It's about civilization. It is always a struggle. It is always a battle. You always have to remain vigilant. And, well, Bob, you were a sailor. So was I. Most of our lives, we were on ships out at sea, and you never win against the ocean. It's always trying to kill you. Always. Even on the best of days. You can go to the beach here in Pensacola right now. It's 95 degrees out, 100 degrees out there. I don't know what the hell it is. I'm trying not to go outside this time of year. And the water's flat and smooth, and the sun is shining. And people drown. 10, 12 people drowned on this beach right down the road from my house every damn year because the ocean is always trying to kill you. And that's how the universe is to kill you. Civilization is fragile. It requires work. You have to shovel shit against the tide every single damn day. Fight's never over. And the minute, just like in the Navy, just like being a sailor, just like being out at sea, the first time that you lose focus, that you stop paying attention, that's when it gets you. That's when it gets you. And I can't tell you how many, I can't tell you in my career, 20-something years in the Navy, how many bodies I fished out of the water, and how many dead people we found, people that went out for a day on a sailboat, and
or that guy,
and or sailors, the people that should have known better, professionals, guys that were in the Navy that were trained, that knew better, that just one moment they didn't pay attention and the ocean killed them. And that's how the republic is. That's how democracy is. That's how civilization itself is. There are always forces, and there are always going to be forces that are trying to burn it to the goddamn ground, and you with it. You're never going to get to just sit on a TV, sit on the couch, smoke dope, and watch TV all goddamn day. Somebody else has got to watch. And this is the problem with this country. Again, even now, this moment, this crux, this is where history turns, right here, right here. And even now, not even 50% of eligible voters will show up to save democracy. And I again, this is the mail that I get. I get hate mail from the left every day from people that are mad, and they're like, I've been voting my whole life and nothing ever changes. Fuck it, I'm not voting now. Well, that'll help. Thanks a lot. And again, it's and I get, and the worst part about it is I get a lot of this shit. I get a lot of this shit from people that live in Southern California, and I'm like, listen, man, every year in your state, first, then there's monsoons and there's mudslides every goddamn year. And I never hear you say, fuck it, this year I've had it. I've been fighting fires my whole life. I'm not doing it this piss on it. Let it burn.
Jim, you
it's
know
the
about
same
this
thing, man. Go
just
ahead.
voting isn't enough.
It's not.
Okay?
It's
Candidates need money to run campaigns.
Yeah.
Candidates need people with handfuls of leaflets to go out and knock on doors and hand them out. Candidates need people to stand beside the road waving the signs as a group when the traffic goes by.
Absolutely.
We got to get engaged and involved in physically. We have to give more than our vote. We got to give our time. We got to give our money. We got to give our heart and our souls, or the bastards will win. I was watching Fox News yesterday. Forgive me.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, are you? You must be crazy.
On the Civil Rights March. And they told this great story about how the Civil Rights March 60 years ago in Washington was so successful because it resulted in the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
Now, anybody here want to go in and postulate on the status of the Voting Rights Act today?
Right.
It's been gutted.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
But we thought we had, we lost.
Well, again, this is how it works. This is how that's how it works. Somebody's asking. Emily's asking if my internet's wonky. Not that I'm aware of. It should be streaming just fine. But again, it's storms are bearing down on us, and it's Florida, so I don't know what to tell you. But to answer to build on what you're saying, Bob, yeah, and that's true. Again, every time that there is a step forward for civilization, whatever that may be, and you look at our own history here in the United States, whether that be the eradication of slavery, whether that be women's rights, whether it be women allowed to vote, whether that is LGBT marriage, right, that we're all fighting over. Every time that there's a victory for civilization, where we step forward, where people and by step forward I mean is that more people have freedom and justice and liberty. And don't be wrong, because we're not there and we'll probably never be there. But where we make some progress, there will always be those who attempt to turn that clock back. It's literally what make America great again means. Turning that clock back to whenever. Notice they never defined that, right? They never defined when that greatness was, because it's different for every one of those people who embrace that ideology. But what they mean by that is make America great again. Turn that clock back to when, like me, had power and you didn't. When I didn't have to tolerate gay people getting married, or women voting, or black people as equals, or whatever that they in their own mind think greatness is. And that's why that phrase, make America great again, resonated so heavily and continues to resonate with a third of the country, because that's how they feel. Because to those people, freedom, democracy, the republic, rights, all of those things, justice, liberty, those are all zero sums. And to them, if somebody else gets more or even the same amount as them, then they are diminished automatically. If they're, yeah, it's 100 years and change since the Civil War. And yet there are still white people here that are very much, their identity is based on the fact that they're better than these people over here, because at one time they got to own those people. And their entire identity is mentality. And so if those people are equal, then they're automatically diminished, because the only thing that they had to feel good about is that they were better than those people. And it's the same thing, again, it's if gay people get married, and you see this, it's literally in the words and the phrase they use to protest. If gay people get married, this is an attack on traditional marriage. Huh? How is that possible? How does anybody, by saying that, they don't say that if you and your traditionally married wife get divorced, that's not an attack on my traditional marriage. If Donald Trump gets divorced 3 times after cheating on multiple wives, on every wife, that's not an attack on traditional marriage. If Newt Gingrich serves his wife who's dying of cancer with divorce papers while he's cheating on her with his second wife, and then divorces her because he's cheating on her with his third wife, not an attack on my traditional marriage. But gay people get married is an attack on my traditional marriage. It makes me feel diminished. See, and again, it's in the words that they use, because how they think. It's, I'm better than these people, and so if they're equal to me, then I'm some. Again, we mentioned this before we went online here. This MMA fighter, and I forget his name. He's fairly famous. He allegedly was some sort of neo-Nazi or something a while back, but he's an MMA fighter, a mixed martial arts fighter who, I mean, this guy does nothing but, work out, take steroids, and kick the shit out of people all day. And this guy was on social media here 2 days ago, bitching about the fact, he crying, just like in the throes of depression, about how America won't let him be a real man anymore. And that manhood, real manhood, isn't allowed in America. And I'm like, what do you define manhood as? What are you talking about? Manhood? You're not allowed to be a man. What does that mean? Because again, this guy, he defines himself, his identity, based on what he thinks, not what people actually think of him, but what he thinks they might think of him. And so this is a guy, and this is a guy that hasn't progressed past about 8th grade mentally. This is a guy that if someone called him gay or something when he was a teenager, they beat the shit out of each other because how dare you insinuate that I'm not whatever this manly ideal is. And and a lot of kids go through that phase, but hopefully we outgrow it. These are people that have never advanced beyond that infantile, that juvenile mindset of defining themselves based on what people think of themselves. That's horrible, man. It's first of all, it makes for terrible people, but second of all, God, it's just sad. This is a guy, and he blocked me online when I said this to him. This is a guy that will never be happy. Never. Sooner or later, this guy's liable to put a gun in his mouth. And because there's literally, he doesn't have an identity of his own. His identity is based on this perception of how other people define him. And so this guy will never, ever, no matter the power, the fame, no matter how many teeth he kicks out of other people's mouths, no matter how many women he beats up, no matter what, no matter how many cars he has, no matter big mansions, how much money he's got, he will never be happy because he doesn't have any identity of his own. This is, it's just, again, this is a significant chunk of what happened to America, where we define ourselves based on what other people think of us. And now it's even worse because it's exaggerated by social media, where people find their happiness based on clicks and likes and clout. You will always be a miserable son of a bitch if your self-worth is defined by other people. And we've circled right back around to Trump, who's a guy that has to cheat on his own golf course in order to feel good about himself. And this is a huge problem in America, where our entertainment is defined this way. Our sense of self and self-worth and identity. This is every jackass in a gigantic truck driving down the road, plastic testicles back, and a Yeti cooler sticker in his window. I've got a $300 cooler. I'm better than you. I mean, this is the level that we've sunk to in this country. And it's, I don't know, as an individual, you can never be happy if you define yourself that way. But as a country, as a civilization, you will never, you'll never be balanced or rational or well-adjusted if your civilization is defined by people who are miserable sons of bitches.
That makes me think about something, Jim. I just posted a link to a book.
Yeah. Just a second. Let me, Cheryl. I see Cheryl Alexander. Cheryl said that beating up a woman doesn't make a man a man, and I absolutely 100% agree. So if it sounded like I was saying that, I apologize, because that's not my intention. But that's how the guy that I'm describing thinks. This is a guy that defines manhood by kicking the shit out of other people. And if he's kicking the shit out of men, you can guarantee he's kicking the shit out of women. And this is like this guy, they just, what's this, the other guy, Christ, I can't remember. Sorry, COVID brain here. But the guy they arrested in social media influencer, the mixed martial arts fighter guy, same thing. These are people that trafficked in women and in sex and that find manhood by smacking the shit out of people. The Sean Connery definition of manhood of slapping women around. I mean, come on, So I'm certainly not advocating that. In fact, I'm advocating just the absolute opposite of that. And I despise terms like real men, but I prefer to think of it as humanity, defining yourself, being happy with yourself. That's the first goddamn step of happy with yourself. And if your happiness depends on hurting other people, well, you're not much of a human being. So anyway, what were you saying, Bob? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just pointing out that your discussion about always needing somebody to look down on. I shared Isabel Walker's book called Caste.
Yeah, I saw that.
Isabel Wilkerson. It is an excellent book on that concept of how we have a caste system in America, and it always gives people somebody to look down on. Now, one other thing.
Andrew Tate. Yeah, Charlie Schmar said Andrew Tate. That's the guy I was trying to think of. Andrew Tate. Yeah, go ahead. Anyway, keep going.
Okay. Anyway, you remember we started off chatting a little bit about the debate, and I almost turned it off when it started. When they turned to Governor DeSantis and said, "Here's this song. Tell us why you think that song is so popular." Now, it was kind of like, are you freaking kidding me? But I stayed with it while all these people looked at this song, "Rich Men North of Richmond."
Yeah, please don't play it, for God's sake.
Yeah. And then I watched an interview with the fella. He was pissed about how.
Oh yeah. He's mad about how they took his song because he didn't intend it that way at all. So now they're calling him a traitor and unmanly because they pirated his song. Yeah.
Those sons of bitches on the stage are the people I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's right. But again, this is you see this all the time where you see an artist who will make a comment about something and then it's pirated by these people and the meaning completely turned around and this is a perfect example. This guy's talking about probably. It's a metaphor for larger things, and you've heard me talk about this all the time. Is that these are I have a senator who's blocked me on social media, but who likes to spend every day posting Bible quotes, and up to the reader to figure out who that is. But this is a guy that's talking about he's posting Bible quotes about greed and about integrity, and I'm like, buddy, I don't know how to tell you this, but the guy you're quoting was talking about you. For when the prophet that you're quoting says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. And your argument is, well, what does that actually mean? Not the part about a rich man getting into heaven, but then they want to argue about what they're really meant by a camel going through the eye of a needle. And then they start arguing about how this is really a narrow gateway in the wall of Jerusalem. I'm like, for God's sake, man. Right? This guy, whatever his definition of eye of the needle was, the meaning of the admonishment is perfectly clear. All right. But again, these are people, again, and you've heard me talk about this. I can drive around this crappy small southern town that I live in, and every single church, everyone has a sign out front, and those signs are all hell and fire and brimstone and hate and God don't like this and God don't like that. But I have yet, and I'm a connoisseur of signs in front of churches. I read every one, drive around looking for it. And I have yet I've driven close to 15,000 miles in the last 8 months across this country from one end to the other. In fact, the last time you and I were in the same room, I had driven 2,000 miles to Missoula, Montana. And every church sign I pass, I read, and I have yet, in all that distance, to ever see a sign from a church that says, "Feed the hungry, clothe the poor, heal the, do as you would have them do unto you. Give up all your wealth and follow me." Never, not one time, not one time. And again, we're back to this senator that quotes the Bible every day. And when this guy talks about, he quotes passages about hypocrisy. For the love of God, man, not get that those passages are talking about you. But again, this is the power of this kind of belief system, of this kind of cult-like thinking, where, and again, people who follow me online, there's a phrase that I use, more self-awareness than a dog licking its own asshole in the middle of a sidewalk. And these are the people that I'm talking about. A perfect candidate for this is Marsha Blackburn. I watch that woman every day. She's got something to say about lying, about dishonesty, about, and I'm like, for you, can't see it. They can't see it. Absolutely can't see it. And so, it's what's going on here? I'm watching something going on in the, what did I miss? Dale, what are we talking about here, buddy? I missed something. And so I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what we're talking about here.
The premise is that they're talking about Jesus being woke and that being the problem.
I find this absolutely amazing. I mean, and I live in this state surrounded by people who wear their religion on their shirt and vote for a government who has declared war on woke. And when his lawyers were pressed on what exactly do you mean by this word, it was that they were forced to define in court as certain inequities and injustices built into civilization that should be addressed. And I said, and you're against that. You're against addressing injustice and inequity and inequality in civilization. But again, we're clearing the shelves down here. This moms demand whatever the hell they are, moms demand justice, whatever the hell they are, this fascist outfit. They're clearing the shelves. They're right here in the town that I live in. They're clearing the shelves. Pretty soon, there's only going to be one book in every school library in Florida, and that's going to be the Bible. And the hilarious part is that book is full of all kind of stuff that these people claim that they don't want children learning about. I mean, there's all kind of raping and pillaging and talk about injustice and equality and doing unto others correctly in that book. And so, I mean, you think they'd be madder than hell about that, but again, they can't.
You mean the one?
This isn't it.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I have a wonderful talk I love to give about the Bible like you never knew it.
Yeah.
Jephthah sacrificing his daughter, Lot's daughters getting they're drunk. I mean, there's just dozens and dozens.
Well, those are always, I write stories for you, and I've got a couple in the pipeline right now that are, thinly veiled metaphors. The robots and the return of aliens that are indistinguishable from angels and God. And so I write those stories for you at BQ Press, and sci-fi religion I think was the original sci-fi, but they're all thinly veiled metaphors. If you read those stories and you pay attention, you can see that the last one there was Oh, it began with the Good Samaritan and the story of the Good Samaritan, and then it transitioned into another parable, biblical parable, and so I look at this stuff all the time. I look at these people and how they talk and what they say, um, and I read their holy books. I went to Sunday school. I was raised in this, and then as an intelligence officer, part of my background was I spent a lot of time in places where people fight over religion. So you you, you have to learn some of this stuff. And so I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. Comments going by, and I wasn't sure what's going on here. So I'm trying to answer questions and trying to pay attention to what people are asking and answer those questions. And usually this is a point where David Gerrold spends the last 10 minutes talking, I can just sit here and surf the internet and listen to him. But David's traveling today, so.
Oh,
But that's all
no.
right because he had it all. He had it last time. David had the whole show last time, and because I was traveling, my wife and I spent a couple of weeks out in the Southwest and on Navajo land and shooting pictures, and that was
Hey,
pretty
I
great.
got a question for you then. You were in the Southwest out
It
there.
was.
You sent incredible pictures back.
I did.
Okay? Now, I am just flabbergasted at the number of pictures you send. Where, I mean, if I was to do a search, could I just search for Stone Kettle SD store and find
Yeah,
what
just go to
my
Etsy.
friends?
Just go to Etsy and type in Stone Kettle, or you can go to my website www.stonekettle.com, and on the upper banner bar on the right hand side there's a link labeled store. If you click on that, it'll take you right there. But those pictures from the Southwest are not up yet. When you use on Navajo land, if you're going to sell them commercially, then you must be licensed to do so. And I have applied for a license through the Navajo Park Service, but they are very backlogged. There's a lot of people that are. And the thing is that I wind up in the queue with Ford filming car commercials out there in Neiman Valley or that sort of thing. And so, and those people are buying licenses for $100,000. I'm not doing that. So I'm kind of low down on the list. I'm going to give them a call tomorrow and see where the status of my licensing is. And but once I have done that and paid fee and then gotten the license, then those images will be available for sale. But it needs to be done properly through the Navajo Nation. And those of you that are thinking about going out there, it's fantastic. I couldn't say enough things about the people that I met, the various families of the Navajo Nation. They were phenomenally wonderful people, and we had a great time. We saw things. I went out there on a photography. My wife set this up. It's the first vacation she and I have had together in about 7 years, about 8 years now, and so my wife, who is very, very, very good at this sort of thing, set up private photography tours with Navajo guides who took us through places that tourists generally don't get to see, and we met some really wonderful people. They were fantastic. I spent an hour talking photography with a Navajo gentleman who knew a hell of a lot about photography, and until the other guides and the people in the tour made us stop and maybe get back on the go. But Monument Valley in 100 degrees talking photography in the middle of nowhere, and we had a great time. But again, if you are a photographer and you are or a filmmaker and you intend to shoot on Navajo land and sell that image or use it commercially afterwards to make a profit of any kind, then you must be licensed. And you go to the Navajo Park Service webpage, and there's a link for that licensing, and there's a phone number, and make sure that you do it correctly. And so when that process is complete, then you'll see those images for sale. And if they don't process it, then you won't see those images. So anyway, that's where we're at.
Well, Thank you, Jim. Well, thanks,
You know,
Jim.
the hell is that
The
all about?
I don't know. My voice cracked. It must be reverse puberty.
Yeah, man, that is not something any of us need to see. You keep that shit to yourself.
Well, let me say this, Jim. I want to thank you for coming on. Your time is valuable. Your wit is incredible, and what you have to say is worth hearing. So, no, it is. I mean, people like you, and so thank you
and I don't know what the hell's wrong with those people. They need to get a dog or something.
I don't know, something about if it's good, people can tell.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but anyway, it's it's the thing about the world that we live in now is that there's always something going on, and as I said before, take anything else away from this podcast, take this away, that it's never done. The job's never done. The job of democracy is never finished. The republic. There's constant maintenance. Being a citizen is an ongoing job from the day you're born to the day you die. That's how it is. And then somebody else has to take over. And that's how we maintain civilization. Because if we don't maintain it and it all burns to the ground, well, then, I submit to you that this may not be the greatest of worlds we live in, but that one's going to be a hell of a lot worse. And there's still enough people around that lived through the last time civilization collapsed in places like Europe 70 years ago, and there's plenty of records and video and sound from that time for you to take a look at if you think for 1 minute that's a world that you might want to live in. And there are people in America who think that they want to live in that world, that wasteland, that apocalyptic post-civilization wasteland where there's going to be some kind of Mad Max warlord living in the desert. Those are movies. Those are dystopian fiction for entertainment. Write that kind of stuff, but that's not the world that any of us want to live in. Okay, and so, again, civilization requires maintenance. It requires work, and it requires every day. And just because you voted one time doesn't mean that you're done. In every election, you have to show up, stand out on the street corner with a sign if that's what it takes. You have to write and have people scream hate at you and send you death threats every day. You have to man the walls. Barbarians are at the gate. They're always at the gate, and you have to man the walls. That's how it is. And so if you don't take anything else away from what we talked about this last hour, take that away from it. You got to show up every day. It's just how it is. Because if you don't, then you're in your schools, taking away your libraries. They're taking away your right to marry the person that you love. They taking away your right to believe as you would. If you don't shovel shit against the tide every day, it's just my dad's favorite phrase. If you're not out there every day, they win. That's what it takes. And there's a horrible misquote, triumph of evil, good men. And that's not actually what was actually said, but the gist of it's correct. For these people to win, they don't have to beat you. You just have to not show up. And this is, you see me write this. This is a phrase that I use. I use it on social media. I use it in things that I write, but it doesn't require war to destroy a republic. To destroy even the mightiest republic is simple. You just have to stop believing in it, and it all falls apart. So don't stop believing in it. Keep showing up. Keep doing it. All right, we're 4 minutes past. David Gerrold's not here to keep me talking. Time to wrap it up, Bob. Wrap it up.
Well, thank you, Jim. And I think you said it well. Choice.
Right.
It's all about that. If we don't keep at it, they're going to take away all our choices. Yeah. And we got to keep it up. And thank you. And you have a good night and goodbye, folks. And thank you.